It's Karen Gerwitz again. I'll be your moderator for this next session, and I'm really pleased to be able to introduce our next speaker, who I think is going to be just an incredible opportunity for you all to learn and see his journey. He's really an inspiring speaker too. I've been on other panels with Kevin. Kevin Kachidza is the founder and CEO of Seraphin AI. Now, Seraphin is a B2B SaaS company, software firm that combines generative artificial intelligence and e-learning platform to deliver rich learning experiences in multiple languages. So we see there's tons of languages coming in. So hopefully you all will appreciate this. You know, Seraphin has been selected to showcase in Canada and Singapore, and he just happens to be at the World Trade Center in Barcelona right now, speaking to you all. So he's a globally minded founder and leader. It comes with a great background, though, in anti-money laundering and financial crime investigation. So a super interesting guy to hear from. And he's got a really interesting path from his home country of Zimbabwe, and then came to this global business that he's founded. He's also a recent graduate of our Global Landing Pad program at the World Trade Center in the city of Denver, where we help international entrepreneurs launch in the United States through Denver to start their global business here with the headquarters in Denver. So let me turn it over to Kevin Kachidza. You're going to be in for a great ride. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Karen. It's always a pleasure to share the stage with you, and thank you so much for that very accurate summary of who I am and where I've been. You know, for those who don't know about Seraphin AI, we pretty much built an innovative and groundbreaking e-learning platform. And because of my specific background, which is, you know, anti-money laundering, anti-terror financing, and you know, some of the national security issues around those issues, we've been able to find an audience in different parts of the world driven by that background. But our broader mission is to help corporations, to help businesses, and to help schools to learn smarter and better using our platform. And Tori, thank you so much for advancing the slides for me. Next slide, please. All right, when it comes to our, jumped a little bit ahead, just one back, please. That's the one. When it comes to who we are as a team, you know, I always encourage folks to go to our website, seraphin.io/team. You'll find that my background, you know, as I mentioned, is in financial crime investigations, but as a team, we really have deep expertise in a number of areas, including technology, global banking, media production. You know, we come from some very well-known institutions. I'm a graduate of the London School of Economics, but critically, because business is really about what you're doing right now. We're launching our business right now, that's our product right now as we speak, in the United States, in the city of Denver, and here in Spain, in the city of Barcelona. And right now, I'm just happen to be at the World Trade Center in Barcelona. This is Seraphin's home, you know, when I am in Barcelona. And right now, our European ambitions are really a project, but I really hope to, you know, to advance some of the great progress that we've made in Europe quite soon, and I will have an announcement to that effect, you know, before too long. Next slide, please. So the other day I was presenting, you know, well, I'd been invited to apply for a CEO peer group position. Now, for those who don't know, and I knew absolutely nothing about this 2 years ago when I was, you know, a regular employee. But there are CEO peer groups that are by invitation only. There's usually a minimum annual revenue requirement. And in our case, I think it was about 10 million US per year. But I've been invited to present to this group and to, you know, to speak about what contribution that I could make. And I presented one slide and one slide only. And this slide is, you know, pretty much summarizes where we are. You'll see it again later in this presentation. But we've been featured in the Global Affairs Canada Software Deal Book from fall of 2021. We were at AI Expo Korea. We were at the Singapore FinTech Festival last year. I'm so pleased to be supported by Denver Economic Development and Opportunity. That is one of our most valuable partnerships. We'll be at Edutech Asia in Singapore in just a few days, actually 2 weeks or so. And I did graduate from the Founder Institute Western Canada, as at the time the #1 rated startup idea. Now, all of this is new to me, folks. As I always say to folks, becoming a founder and a CEO was not on my 2 to 3 year plan. But in just a few slides, you'll find out exactly what prompted me to go from having an idea to incorporating a company, to getting investors, and now launching an international office. Next slide, please. Right. So for those who don't know, I'm originally from Zimbabwe. I was born in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is, for those who are not geographically inclined, is the country just north of South Africa. So in, I guess, modern people speak, I was born not far from where Elon Musk was born, but nowhere near as wealthy as Elon. Now, Zimbabwe, according to the CIA World Factbook, has about 15.1 million people. But the one stat that I wanted to kind of zero in on, and Tori, if you just advance to the next slide, is that despite being a country of so many beautiful people, such kind-hearted and education and progress-oriented folks, Zimbabwe's gone through some very, very difficult times over the past 20 years. And the one stat that kind of stuck out to me, I was looking at the CIA World Factbook, and the net migration rate from Zimbabwe, so that's the relative number of people that are migrating from Zimbabwe to other countries, was 4.83 per 1,000, estimated by the CIA World Factbook in 2022. By comparison to Zimbabwe's 4.83 per 1,000 people, the United Kingdom is 3.59 per 1,000. And the United States, where many of you are, is 3.02. So we have a relatively high level of migration. And it really is because during the 1990s and the early 2000s, there were several economic shocks to Zimbabwean society. Next slide, please, Tori. When most people think about Africa, they think about elephants and wildlife and natural resources, and all of that is still there. But in the 1990s and in the 2000s, there was hyperinflation in Zimbabwe. I know that 10% inflation, it really hurts for people. People are going through some very tough times right now. But and not to compare different situations, but in Zimbabwe at one stage it was 1,000,000%. And if you're wondering what the currency of Zimbabwe is, it's currently the US dollar, because that hyperinflation devalued the currency to the point where it was not worth a lot. And with that high level of net migration, next slide, please, Tori, comes with what you'd expect: brain drain, human suffering, unemployment, and yet the core of the country itself, in terms of its natural resources, it is a very, very wealthy country. I think some people refer to it as the natural resources curse or something like that. But yeah, Zimbabwe has the second largest platinum deposits in the world. There are also very large gold deposits, as you'll see on the next slide. And in addition to Zimbabwe's very large gold deposits, there are also, what everybody in the world likes, apparently, and that's diamonds. And that's on the next slide. So mostly of the industrial variety, but certainly enough to provide, a sizable amount of revenue coming into the country. So, despite what a lot of people, may have as a perception of Zimbabwe and, how I grew up, the next slide will pretty much give you, it's a photograph of, the city that I grew up in. It's a modern city. It obviously has, a history of colonialism, and some of the buildings and do reflect that. But I remember having a pretty happy upbringing, a pretty happy childhood. Next slide, please, Tori. And the reason I spend quite a bit of time on this particular part of my background is because I could easily have been any one of the kids that are in this photo right now. Probably the young man to the extreme left with the big smile that kind of looks a little bit like me. But Zimbabwe is full of Kevin Kachidzas. Africa is full of Kevin Kachidzas. It is a continent with so much potential. The only thing that really, well, the main thing that really stands in the way of, kids like the ones you see on the screen getting to the place where I am right now is being given an opportunity, is being given a chance, is being given access to quality education and clean water and, all of the things that we tend to take for granted in, where we live. And so, I really want everybody as we go through my journey to remember that this is where I came from. And ultimately, if a guy from Africa could travel to literally the other side of the world, Vancouver, Canada is as far away as you can get from Durban, South Africa, which is, close to where I was born. It is literally the other side of the world. And so if someone like me could come to America, so to speak, and start a business, then you can do it too. Next slide, please, Tori. One of my favorite movies of all time is Coming to America. Now, I actually didn't write any notes about this. I think I actually just really wanted to include Eddie Murphy in my presentation today. But I find that story just so hilarious. Fun fact about me, I've watched Coming to America 1, but I still haven't watched Coming to America 2 because of the fact that I don't know, there's something that seems a little bit sacred about the first one, certainly in my mind, but I will get around to it. I know you've got to get Amazon Prime to get it, so well done, Jeff Bezos. I'll do that eventually. Next slide, please, Tori. So I am from Africa, but I am a proud Canadian. I live in Western Canada right now. I live in Vancouver, which is one of the most beautiful and amazing cities in the world. But when I started my journey in Canada, and I actually did come to America through New York City, which is another reason why I really like that Eddie Murphy movie. But my journey started, as you'll see on the next slide, in Montreal. I went to Montreal with the objective of improving my French to the point where I would be fully bilingual and would be able to compete with other folks on that basis. Canada is a bilingual country at the federal level. And I'd learned French in school. I'd learned, done business French at university. I spent the first year not in a French-speaking job, but just immersing myself in that environment to get that edge, to make sure that, whatever job that I got, I could say, yes, I speak English and I speak French and my Spanish is okay as well. And on the next slide, you'll see that after a couple of years, I decided that Vancouver was a better place to be. I'm from Africa. I do appreciate warm weather. Montreal is a wonderful city, but it does have winters that take some getting used to. So I moved from Montreal to Vancouver in the year 2015, and we're getting close to the episode that really changed how I looked at the world, how I looked at opportunities, etc. Next slide, please. Right. So this photo was taken round about the year 2018, I would say. And look at that big smile. I'm such a happy guy. There I was, in my dream job as an anti-money laundering investigator for, one of the largest banks in the world. Through giving presentations like this, I'd been, appointed as one of the bank's diversity and inclusion spokespeople, and life was good. I mean, I even had a new pair of Gucci glasses. They were real Gucci glasses. I think I paid $200 for those. But this was amongst one of the happiest times in my life, I must say. I was achieving the things that I wanted to achieve. I was climbing the corporate ladder. Yeah, now I can say I'd probably been overlooked for promotion, a few too many times, but certainly my idea of success was being met. And on the next slide, as you'll see, the next slide is really the beginning of where my entrepreneurial journey lies. UBC stands for the University of British Columbia. And in the year 2019, during the course of my diversity and inclusion duties, A senior person within the bank had, walked up to me at a, at a diversity and inclusion show or whatever it was. I can't remember, some corporate do, and talked to me for 5 minutes and said, you know what, I think you'd be great at teaching a program at the University of British Columbia that is specifically focused on young, gifted kids. And you'd be teaching them about, wait for it, how to start a company. Now, the first thing I thought is, I have absolutely no idea how to start a company. Now, how are we even going to do that? Yes, I'm in finance. Yes, I'm an investigator. But how do I teach anybody, how to go from having an idea to incorporating your company to getting investors, all that sort of thing? And the answer was, well, this was a program which was sponsored by Junior Achievement. Many of you will be aware of the Junior Achievement, and all of the company building material was provided to me. So it was essentially a series of presentations, and having a background in banking, kind of helps. Now, it's important for you to note that at the University of British Columbia, there is a program called the University Transition Program. And this program selects academically gifted children to complete the typical high school and university entry requirements, which usually take maybe 6 years. The program takes those kids through that program in 2 years, which means that the oldest of them starts their first year as a freshman at university, in college, at the grand old age of 15 years old, some of them 14. My youngest child, youngest student in the class was 12 years old. Next slide, please. And this is a photo of the actual classroom that I spent 3 months, teaching this company building program at Junior Achievement British Columbia at the University of British Columbia. It changed my perspective on what was possible. And to cut a long story short, if you ever want motivation to start a business, be in a position where you're teaching 12-year-olds and 13-year-olds how to build a business. They go ahead and they build those business, they create a product, and they actually ship units. There was a time when I said to myself, if these kids can do this, then surely, I can do this as well. Next slide, please. I really must impress that at this point in what I call the before time, so before the pandemic, before the world became a different place, I believe that I was, achieving not every measure of success that I'd set myself, but I was well on the path to getting there. I was helping people to build businesses, helping, out in the community, diversity and inclusion spokesperson, all of that good stuff. Life was good. And I think, some of us do remember the way that 2019 was fairly fondly. The next slide, please. Like any good thing, the life that I had before the pandemic came to an end. When I was looking for a stock image for job losses, I literally typed in job losses into the search engine that we're looking for, and this was the first image that came up. The job losses of 2020 really took it changed a lot of lives in a lot of places. A lot of you will be very familiar with the devastating effect of the pandemic. Some of you have parents and relatives who lost their jobs. Some of you, lost your own jobs if you did have one. And many of us were just locked up at home. And this was a period of, great change and turmoil around the world. Things seem a lot different now, and here I am in Barcelona, all that good stuff. But back then, we had no idea what the world was going to become. Next slide, please. One of the most difficult things to be doing is to be looking for a job, especially during a pandemic. So if you're at that stage, if you know people who are, still struggling with that, believe me, I am so connected to that feeling still to this day, that it kind of drives me to look for solutions in terms of how we can help each other out as societies and the different communities that that I'm a part of. But this was the hardest time of my life. You can imagine being a guy, who a few years before had pretty much everything that he wanted, and was on this public stage, and to have that all taken away. I think a lot of people know what that feels like. Next slide, please. And it really didn't matter who you were at that time. It could happen to anybody. And, this is a philosophy that I've taken away from that whole episode, that this can really happen to just about anybody. And even today, the UK Prime Minister, Liz Truss, who I think was in the job for about 6 weeks, is out of a job. And this is a person with nuclear weapons who's just lost their job. So on the next slide, please. I tried to remember, the kind of advice that I'd always gotten, that, when one door closes, another door opens. There's, keep hope alive and just focus on your goals. Folks, I made so many applications to so many places and got so many rejections. The great thing about having, like email these days, is, and I'm having had it for 10 years, is I can go through and read all of the rejection letters that I got. We regret to inform you, we regret to inform you, we regret to inform you. And, some of those regrets came from, previous employees who I really thought I'd done a great job for, but, that was the way the world was then. But there's always one door, which I think a lot of people know is always open. And that's the door of entrepreneurship. The next slide, please. You see, I used to, hear about these folks who go through adversity and then become opportunity seekers. They take a look at their current situation that would drive them towards success. And I think to myself, who are these people? I mean, I don't know them, but there was something about being in a situation which is truly desperate, not desperate in the sense that we've always known it, that, if you don't have a job, then you don't have money, and then you don't have rent. So you can't, you may not have a home. That period was very strange in Canada, certainly, because we were all getting stimulus checks. So I'd apply to as many jobs as I could. I'd get rejected by just about everyone, but I wouldn't have to worry about my rent. And what that started was, it was actually the best thing that ever happened to me. It freed me up to be able to take a look at the way that people were trained, the way that I used to train people in the field of anti-money laundering and anti-terror financing, and how digital technologies are changing the world. That there were obviously new ways of working. It was obvious that people were working from home. It was obvious that for these new ways of working, we're going to need new tools. And I think I did myself one of the greatest favors that I could possibly have ever done. Next slide, please. I was prepared to learn. Now, I know people may find this a little bit strange, but yeah, there was a point in my period of my almost 9 months of unemployment, after I, felt sorry for myself for a bit, that I just, went onto YouTube and I'd start watching videos. And yeah, some of them were cat videos, and there were a lot of memes as well. But I remember this day very, very clearly. I had two options on that day. I could either learn how to make sourdough bread, which is a really cool thing to know how to do, or I could learn about generative artificial intelligence. And I thought, okay, let me learn about this generative artificial intelligence. It sounds super cool, because at that point, I knew absolutely nothing about artificial intelligence. And again, I always impress on folks, we're talking about generative artificial intelligence. And we now live in a period of time where all of the world's knowledge, or as much of it as can be accessed, lives on the internet. It lives on YouTube. Next slide, please. It lives on LinkedIn Learning. And one thing that I realized was that there were all these creators, ordinary people like you and me, who were also locked indoors, who also didn't have things to do, and who were creating this content, the content that people were consuming because everybody was locked up at home and they had nothing better to do. And some of it was in entertainment, others of it was related to a skill that this person had. Next slide, please, Tori. But it all had the same thing in common. People were doing this from their homes. They were doing this from their living rooms. They were doing this from the garage in their parents' home. This drive towards entrepreneurship and digitizing what you know and your skills and experience was something that seemed to be everywhere. And if you were looking for it, you'd notice that there were all kinds of people engaged in this type of entrepreneurship. Next slide, please. And there were older people, there were younger people, there were people who were students, there were people who were experts in their fields, but there were people who looked like me, and there were people who looked absolutely nothing like me. But everybody was in on it, and not everybody, but a lot of people were in on it, and they were creating real value. I was learning real things. And the next slide, please. But the point where I think I decided that enough was enough and I had to, chart my own entrepreneurial journey was when I found out that once again, there were kids doing this. They were making a lot of money. They were creating a lot of value. They were, indulging in what they loved. And this was a phenomenon which reminded me of course, the university transition program. There's something about seeing, younger people doing something that, is creating so much hype and so much value around the world that inspired me to take that next step and to incorporate my company and to get going with entrepreneurship. Next slide, please. So I discovered that folks were doing this on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook Messenger. Content was being distributed in all kinds of ways, including on YouTube. And I closed down my Facebook account, or at least I thought I had, around about the 2018 or so, because I'd entered the field of financial crime investigations. And by the way, financial crime investigators do look at your social media. So, there is that. Next slide, please. And so, I think the one thing that I came away from this thinking was that, and please feel to leave a message in the chat about whether you agree, you disagree, a personal experience, anything that you feel you can contribute towards this debate. But the global pandemic of 2019, 2020 was probably the most significant business and startup accelerator event in the past 20 years, and possibly in our lifetimes, because of all this innovation, because of all this digitalization, and because in one fell swoop, the world became a different place. Next slide, please. So I only have 10 minutes left in this session, or a few more minutes, so I'm going to give you the short story. The biggest favor that I did for myself was realizing that I knew nothing about starting a startup company. And so I was Googling how to get into Y Combinator when I found Founder Institute. Now, the Founder Institute is the world's largest idea stage technology accelerator. They specifically go out there to say that if you're an employee or you're an aspiring entrepreneur and you want to go from having an idea, you have an idea, maybe you have an idea or you don't, but you want to go transition to being an entrepreneur, then we will make you investable. And I encourage you to go to fi.co, no matter what city that you are in the world. There are about 180 locations. There's one right here in Barcelona, Spain. But I went to the one and in Western Canada. And that's where I learned to build a company. I did everything that my tutors and mentors said I should do. And today I'm, quite privileged to be a mentor at Founder Institute, helping other folks go from having an idea to incorporating their company to getting that all-important first investment. Next slide, please, Tori. So yeah, in the couple of minutes that I have left, we're going to zip through, what I've created here, and hopefully you'll find some value in knowing my background and then seeing what I was able to create literally in my home over the course of X period of time, until we were eventually able to move to a real virtual office, so to speak. So at Sarafin AI, we built an AI-powered e-learning platform that's purpose-built for delivering mission critical skills training in multiple languages, where training is mandatory. And our mission in life is to help corporations, businesses, and schools learn smarter and better. And it's no secret that the partnerships that we have around the world have really been driven by partnerships with government entities and cities around the world, in the United States, here in Barcelona, Spain, and of course in my home country of Canada. Next slide, please. So whenever you're launching a business, be it international or local, you have to be solving a problem, and that problem has to be a giant problem, hopefully. So the problem that we're addressing as a startup is that training dozens or hundreds of employees at a time has become a real problem. I realized that in the 9 months that I spent, without a job. I realized that the way that people were trained would have to train, and engage in learning and development would have to change. And because I came from a sector where training was mandatory, I was able to apply my personal experience to banks, to securities companies. I've done cryptocurrency investigations. I soon realized that anywhere where there's distributed teams and work from home, that this would continue to be an issue. Next slide, please. So we built an e-learning platform, and the e-learning platform has all of the functionality that you'd expect from, a traditional e-learning platform, except it ships to you, the user, with built-in AI-generated content, which you can build on top of. You can add, human instructor-led content. You can ask us to create certain content, and we're always creating these rich learning experiences, from anti-money laundering to anti-terror financing to cybersecurity, environmental, social, and governance. We've been spending a year just responding to the feedback that our clients and our partners give us and creating products that serve international markets. Next slide, please. So yeah, and the one great innovation about our platform, and I know I've got 1 minute left, is that unlike other e-learning platforms where you have to connect to Zoom, to discuss what you've learned, and there isn't that learning and communicating and engaging at the same time. Well, we won a pitch contest last week. It's called the Agora RTE Startup Battleground contest with a prize of $15,000 which is great when you're a startup, because we added these interactive user experiences and we thought about the future of how people want to learn and how people want to interact. So folks, that's pretty much my time. There is a lot more to tell you, but I'm so thankful to the World Trade Center in Denver for giving me this opportunity to speak about my journey. I will be in the session a little bit later, talking about the internship opportunity that we have and how we're launching a business in Denver, Colorado, in Canada, of course, and right here in Barcelona, Spain. Thank you so much to everybody for listening to me. Thank you from the World Trade Center in Barcelona. And back to you, Karen. Thank you so much.
Oh, Kevin, you're such a rock star. Thank you so much. We love seeing your journey, and we want to see you land here successfully. So one of the questions that's coming on the Q&A is, what's the most challenging thing you've faced as an entrepreneur?
Oh, the most challenging thing, and I'll just, say this very quickly, is apparently there's no book, there is no guide map. Is that it? I'm sorry, my mind is now thinking in an African language. But when you become a founder and a CEO in such a short space of time, because that's the nature of technology, it can grow very quickly and investors can help you get there. It's very difficult to navigate, how different your life has become. For a start, a lot of people start being nice to you, but you've got to build a business. And you also, I think, have a responsibility to give back to the communities that have supported you in your journey. I know that I'm not sitting here at the World Trade Center in Barcelona because I did this all myself and I'm such a smart guy. I had help along the way.
Sure.
And to everybody that's ever helped, me, to anybody that's ever helped somebody from Africa in particular, because that's where I originally came from. If you've ever helped a Canadian, thank you so much. It means a lot, and it's helped to get me to where I am today.
Great. Let me ask you a follow-up question to that. What advantages have you gained from being a globalist?
Oh, yeah. Well, I remember not so long ago when being a globalist was a bit of a swear word, but I think it's a good thing. My language capabilities, to be quite honest. I chose Barcelona because this is a city that I can, communicate in. I do speak Spanish. For those who are wondering, I speak Spanish, French, English, Shona. I even speak a Dutch dialect called Afrikaans. And this has all been of value at some time and place, in my journey, whether it was my time at the Capital One call center, speaking to clients in Spanish and helping them with, with whatever fraud issue was there, or it was, my French, which helped me to get into, a bank I really admire, the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce, great bank. If you're at CIBC, well done on you. And so I found that the language capabilities and just the resilience, because I've been through so many different things. I've called upon those, that quality and that experience quite a few times in my journey, and I continue to do so. This founder journey looks, quite glamorous, but it's quite difficult. Sometimes you don't know that you're going to get to where you want to go, and sometimes you do feel like things are going against you. But because I have such great partnerships, I have great support, particularly from the city of Denver, folks within the city of Denver. We're getting there, and I will have some very exciting news about our progress in Europe in the next 2 weeks.
That's so great. I know we only have a couple of minutes, but what's some quick advice that you would give to new startups?
Oh, new startups. I would say find yourself a startup accelerator. It doesn't have to be the Founder Institute. It can be 500 startups. It can be Techstars. There's so many great organizations that are there to help startups. There are a lot of people that are invested in the success of startups. Startups bring jobs and opportunities to different regions. And so get into those ecosystems, talk to folks. It doesn't even, you don't even have to be selling, but just be around people and, be known for, for something. It certainly really, really helped me. I went from, a year ago, never having been to Spain at all, been to a lot of places, but never having been to Spain at all, to being, here in Barcelona, supported by the government of Barcelona, Catalonia, supported by the Trade Commissioner Service of, the Embassy of Canada here in Barcelona. I've received so much support from so many places. And of course, the World Trade Center in Denver. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Kevin. Just to wrap up, a couple sentences about why people should join your breakout session this afternoon at the networking about joining your internship. What will they learn? Yeah.
Oh, folks, I'm not an expert on a lot of things. Certainly not sourdough bread after that whole YouTube incident, but I am an expert on how I built this company literally in my bedroom. And, it's such a privilege to be hiring people in different places. When you come from a place when you were looking for a job and, people were not responding to your job applications. So yeah, come and learn about how I did it. If you find that to be of interest, if you're an aspiring entrepreneur or you just want to meet, a person from Africa, come and join the session. I'm happy to chat. I'm probably the least CEO that you'll meet because of the fact that I'm so new to this. But I'm so thankful to everybody that's supporting me in my journey, and to everybody that joined today. It looks like we have 75 participants. That's really exciting. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Kevin. I really appreciate you chiming in, especially from Barcelona. Greet our colleagues at the World Trade Center there. This brings our session to a close, and I look forward to engaging with you all later in the networking session. So let me turn it back over to Tori to introduce our what's coming up next. Thank you for joining us. Bye-bye.